Uh, so yeah, I was just saying, like that rabbit device. You could imagine it was, instead of being a rabbit device, it was just a phone
Yep.
talking to your PA,
Yep.
right? And in that case, you would have, um, uh, or someone who's representing you, right? Like
Yep.
there are websites where, like you can shop as a crowd, right? Like crowd shopping and stuff.
Like
And they,
undercover,
sorry,
or
I don't know. Like for example, you go, I want to. If the electricity provider provided us with a better rate,
yep.
then we would all swap over to using the better rate, right?
Yep.
And if you act as a group, I think there's a website for that. I think um, the guy from, yeah, I heard about it when I was working at RateMyAgent.com.
Oh yeah.
The guys that are related to that company. I think there's a startup that was doing that.
Hmm.
And the idea was that you can just give them your bills, and then they will find a provider for you. But they have the clout then to go. We will swap energy providers for a whole bunch of people if they give us a better rate. So then
Yeah.
they
Okay.
can
Sort of like models
negotiate.
working.
Yeah, right. So they
Yeah.
can negotiate for you, and that idea is interesting, right? So imagine then you go, okay, well, my agent that is on my
Yep.
Rabbit phone has access to a bunch of providers and can pick the provider for me based on my criteria, right? So I go, well, I don't want to go overseas. I only want to use a Australian provider, and I want, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
But whether that's filling my shopping cart, or whether it's getting me an Uber or a taxi or a whatever Lyft or whatever.
Yep.
Like there's some criteria I've got, um, and if it could learn that, then it could shop around for me. I think that's an interesting idea.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's if it was that effective and if it just worked out. Okay, this one's like the better price. Like the other one could just go out of business like overnight because it's like everyone's like transferred
Yeah, totally.
automatically. Like it could so then that's like kind of pretty risky for a lot of businesses because yeah, I don't really believe in like objectivity for any business sort of thing. But if you think of like what churn is, like the business, if there's like business A and business B, and business B is just better, but business A is trying to stop the churn because they know that business B is better.
Hmm.
Like, are business A actually like are they actually helping their customers? Like,
Yeah,
so,
and the problem you're not in control of is what criteria is the thing using to choose A is better than
yep,
B.
yep,
So so I was hearing that like uh, lots of brand companies are no longer hanging out on Amazon anymore
hmm,
because when they're on the Amazon store, they're competing against all the knockoffs,
yep,
and the knockoffs will be cheaper.
yep,
So if you're comparing by price, they never sell anything.
yep.
So and it's actually really difficult to buy like various items, quality versions of the various items, because you just can't find them on the store. There's just so many knockoffs on
Yeah, I've heard that
there.
power, like things that are critical, like power devices or adapters, like that, like stay away of a lot of stuff on Amazon because they're just like can actually like harm your hardware when you plug it in.
Yeah, right. And like the one I saw was just electronic components and things. So you've got
Hmm.
like this guy had a thing that you put two wires into, and then you crimp it down to join the wires together.
Hmm.
And you bought some on Amazon, and you just put them in, crimp them down, and just pull, and they fall apart. Right?
Oh
You
no!
went down to
Oh
like
god!
Bunnings and got them.
Yeah.
Put the same thing, it's rock solid, right?
Hmm.
And it's literally just a bit of metal inside a tube that you crimp down, right? Like how
Yeah.
hard can that be? And yet, it's just shit, and it's like not, it's just not appropriate for the purpose, right?
But
And yet, there's no. How do you manage the quality control of that? It looks fine, right?
they
It's got a
probably
bunch
had
of reviews. The
had good
reviews say
reviews because they probably bought a whole bunch of fake ones.
exactly right,
Yeah.
and you go, it's got 5 stars, it's got a bunch of reviews.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I think Amazon the stores try to do something where it's like the only verified buyers like will like
we'll
can
leave a
just leave
review.
a review,
Yeah.
but all you have to do is just ask a few of your mates to buy the product and leave some fake reviews. Like it's
Yeah.
like I think with like isn't there something with like to get on the like top selling it's like the Times whatever like what am I it's the word I'm looking for like the best selling list
Yeah.
like you just need to like buy a whole bunch of your own books, and then like that
Yeah.
spike will then cause you to be on the top of the sales charts.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's interesting. There was a someone giving a talk on that, and they were saying how you can detect that quite easily.
Yeah, right.
And then that's interesting because you can look back at the stacks and see who's done it.
Oh
So
wow.
you can see which
Oh shit.
which
Yeah, it's
yeah. Yeah.
it's sort of like
Um,
an advertising cost because I don't know how much that would say cost you $5,000, $10,000, but yeah, the obviously the return on that might be massive. Way bigger because you can now say bestseller and you're on the top of the list and so forth.
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, sorry, cough, cough, cough.
No, no worries. I don't know. I'll put a reminder in the channel. Busy. After our biggest episode yet, no one wants to come.
That's it. Everyone's just blown out of the water by it. So yeah, what's going on in your life?
Well, I'm still just a React developer, going back to being a front ender. I'm a bit rusty at it, but
Okay.
getting some of the muscles back. Um,
Oh man, I'm struggling at the moment with just some Vue 3 code, which is like I'm literally just trying to create a calculated field and then like observe it. The calculated field and like I need this thing to change whenever the computed value changes,
yeah,
basically, right? The um, and the computed thing is talking to a Vuex store, like it's getting value
okay.
out of a Vuex store, and there's just something in that pipeline that's not right, and it's just not updating, right?
Hmm.
And it's just so hard to diagnose and work out what's going on and step through it all. It's just
Not
the whole state of that stuff is just so dodgy.
so is that.
Like,
That's with Vue.
yeah, that's Vue 3 I'm
Yeah.
using
Okay.
at the moment. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's interesting the way that, so we're moving our app over from Vue 2 to Vue 3. So
Mhm.
um, using GitHub Copilot a lot in that process.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can literally just like select your code and go, okay, well, what would that look like as a Vue 3 component?
Oh
And then it
wow.
will go,
Oh.
sure, you just rewrite it like this. And it's, it gets some things right, some things wrong, but
Hmm.
it's always, and that's where I'm finding is a good sweet spot for Vue, for Copilot is that idea where you're having to do something in a language you haven't used that much, but
Hmm.
you know how you would do it in another thing. So you can
Yeah.
write it
Okay.
in one and then go to convert it for me.
Huh. It's like a
Um,
translator.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm also struggling with so I'm learning Zig at the moment as well,
Oh, cool.
and so there's a bunch of situations where I'm trying to like I know how I do it in another language, and I'm asking like
Yeah.
ChatGPT or Copilot about it, and it doesn't know Zig very well because
Because
Zig's
it's
fairly
the
new,
new. Yeah.
um,
Okay.
and as a result, it frequently makes things up.
Huh. Oh no.
So yeah, so that it's not working for me in that scenario,
Hmm.
um, whereas it has worked really well in like Python or in
Hmm.
you know yeah, TypeScript or Vue, Vue code or whatever. So yeah, so but it's nice having the. Oh, the other thing I'm really struggling with in that is I use it as a like a plugin for VS Code, for yeah VS Code, and the I want some delineation between when you sort of say autocomplete and it goes, oh yeah, you've got an object. I know the type of that object. So when you say dot, I know what things I should put after that, right?
Mhm.
And I'm used to that being a definitive list defined by the interface, interpreted from the type of the object,
Yeah.
right? So it's like documentation. It's like this is what you've got available to you. These are your options.
Hmm.
But with having like something that can make stuff up in your
Yeah.
editor, right? And no delineation between, well, is this chat GPT suggestion of what might be available?
Yeah.
Or is this the actual like documentation you've interpreted from the types, right?
Yeah.
It'd be really nice if those suggestions were a different color or something in the UI
Yeah.
so that I can see like these are known to be true and these are things that you're guessing is what I'm trying to type.
Or two-step process like this must be being done where like you come up with the fuzzy suggestion, but then now you've got like a thing to like validate against the strict system. So then you can like, okay, it's come up with like 20 suggestions. Then I just need to look up quickly, which ones are real.
Yeah, right.
Like why
Yeah. It's like something should be doing that for me,
it should
right?
be like a hybrid. Yeah,
Yeah,
this must be like I haven't really studied this sort of stuff, but that seems so obvious to me
exactly.
to sort of because it's expensive to find the to get to the first idea, but it's fairly trivial to verify it. So
Mm,
it doesn't matter if the first idea could be wrong. You just have to then, yeah. But now you've got something that can be quick.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, these tools are already providing some value, and uh, I think they're only going to get better
Hmm.
as people build on that sort of tooling.
Yeah, I still have resisted installing
Yeah,
Copilot because I'm worried
yeah.
my skills were atrophied. That's the main reason.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Your skills will atrophy.
The original reason was because I felt it was a little bit unethical because you're basically just uploading all your code to Microsoft, and you so often you sign these forms saying, "Hey, I'm not going to put the code will only be on my laptop. I've got it's all encrypted. I'm not going to connect to insecure Wi-Fi. Blah blah blah. I'm going to do this like absolute. I'm going to work in a Faraday cage in the middle of
Right.
the desert, and
Yeah.
not,
So you mean when you're signing your insurance, your employment contract, you
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
you
or an
agree
extra
with
contract, or yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you say, yeah, yes, I promise I'll keep your IP safe.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so safe. It's so precious. So I'll carry around in a little diamond box. Whereas
Yeah.
like with this like Copilot stuff, you just like it's like effectively you've just gone to GitHub's or Microsoft's like S3 bucket
Yeah.
and just went zoop, like just shoved it
Here's
up
my
there.
code. Tell me what. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like no one's really. I guess if everyone does it, then it's not really a risk anymore. But it just seems like no one's not
Yeah.
all. You can't fire every single software engineer because they've all installed this thing. But
Yeah. So well, we pay for it, and we I think the enterprise version at least is it's like it has access to your GitHub repository anyway.
okay,
You
yeah.
know, so um, and I assume it's
But they're
the
training on it, like you said, Zig. Like how are they going to learn more about
yeah.
Zig? They're
Yeah, so there's different things there, right? So
yeah.
with a large language model, you've got the training of the model, in which
Okay.
case it has to learn all these concepts, including what English is and how it works, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then once you've got that, you're then asking it questions in terms of like, given this information, blob,
Yeah.
what's the how should I clean up this thing, or how should I fix this error, right? And then that's within the session the chat you're having. It's not within the
Okay.
engine's learned behavior.
Yep.
So it's yeah. There's definitely two phases to that, right? And anything that you've got in a GitHub repository that's public, that's fair game for people to just train their engines off, and that's where they get a lot of the auto suggestion of like, well, people tend to have code that looks like this following what you've typed there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So and frequently it's right, but it often does things too, like it's when it's suggesting things to you, it's looking at what you've typed previously in your file, or
Okay.
like so if you're following a pattern, so you're doing
Yeah.
this thing for each input parameter that you've been given, you do the same sort of logic,
Mhm.
then it'll hammer that stuff out really fast. Or if
Mm.
you've got something that you're rewriting and you've got it commented out above in the old style, as you write the new style, it keeps suggesting, okay, but you're doing this transformation, right?
Hmm.
So it's clever enough to work
Yeah.
that out.
Right. Yeah. Wow. It's crazy.
So
Yeah. It's mind blowing how it's able to do that. To be honest, because
yeah, right.
it's like IntelliSense on crack. Like it's just. Whereas I imagine like because you've got a lot of experience with the C sharp, like IntelliSense, which was like
Yeah,
would have had to have been like best of breed 5-10 years ago or whatever. But it's like,
yeah.
did it have to? Did it feel like that system had to like sort of know all the patterns ahead of time? Like, oh, you're doing the getter setter pattern, and like
So yeah, so
you're writing a singleton or whatever.
yeah, so with the intelligence stuff, like that was I used ReSharper a lot as a plugin, but
Yeah, that's what takes it
the
to the next level.
yeah the and that allowed me to do refactorings, and refactorings are like just code manipulations,
That
like
have
code
names.
right, which have names exactly,
Yeah,
and they have a certain pattern to them. That works. That worked really well. If you wanted to do something like you're saying, where you go, oh, actually, I want to write this block of code over and over again. Like, say you want to start a new test, so you go test. Like you would write little templates for
hmm,
each of those, like snippets
yeah,
with
okay,
variables in them, and then you could just type the first thing, press tab, it spits it out and takes you to the first parameter, first option. Then you type your thing, and ReSharper has a language for that where you can define those templates and then limit things. So you can say this variable here is actually, this thing here that I'm going to type in here is actually a variable name, and so I want it to have variable name syntax. And can you suggest it to me based upon the type and things
Okay.
like that? Or you might say this one here is actually a something that's going to be available within the scope. Like you can constrain
Yep.
what it's going to be
You add in
such that
constraint.
when you tapped that field, its auto suggestions are much better,
Yep.
which was really good. ReSharper also had the ability to define search and replace based upon the AST. So
Yeah.
you
Wow.
could literally say, find me all of the code within the code base that has a function that has a name, that has a parameter list where one of the parameters is a type string, and the
Yeah. Right.
like you see, so you could literally define one of these search things, and then a replace that matches. So you can go, now define, here's a template,
Yeah.
grab
Wow.
that field from there, that field from there, for they're applying these transformations,
Hmm.
and then you could run that over your code base to do massive changes,
Huh.
sort of like almost defining your own refactorings, like.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that was like I frequently didn't need to do that though, because I tended to just chain refactorings together. Yeah, I really miss
Oh, it's
having
more
having
code.
an IDE
Yep.
that understands your types
Yeah.
sufficiently well that when I say do this change, it will know what it's doing and do it.
Yeah. So
Like I'm missing that with Zig, right? Like I want
yeah.
to be able
Okay.
to collect code and go extract method, right? And it
Yeah.
should just do that.
Yep.
Like every language should have that by now,
Yep.
right? And I often find like VS Code has got plugins to do that sort of thing, and I
Yep.
find that most of the time that's fine. But on my Vue 3 template I'm currently using, I tried to do it, and it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Right.
No refactorings found. Right? I'm like,
Uh,
it's the same language
yeah.
in a different context. It should
Yeah.
just work,
Okay. Yep.
right?
It's just
If,
JavaScript.
if yeah, it feels like that old thing of if you had SQL inlined in your code,
Yep.
then the syntax highlighter wouldn't know what to do with it because you
Yep.
had it inside a text string,
Yep.
right? And you'd go, "Oh yeah, I don't know, that's text," right? And you go, "No, that's SQL," right? So
Yep.
nowadays they're a bit smarter and they can go, "Oh well, actually, I can see that thing you've got inside that is SQL,"
Mhm.
right? Love that, right? But as a result, like you should be able to go, okay, well, I can do my SQL refactorings on that SQL, and I can do my,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
my
Huh.
whatever refactorings on the
Yeah.
outside and so on. Like
Huh.
I don't know, just yeah, it feels like there's an abstraction missing there. Like the I think the what do they call it? The language services, the thing.
Language servers.
Yeah, do you have language services running for each of the languages that you use, and your IDE hooks into those? And I think those provide refactorings, like they can provide
I
refactorings.
think I haven't. I've never really explored the docs, or I've never written
Yeah,
one because they sound so complicated. But there's a
yeah,
lot
right.
out there, so there mustn't be too complicated. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think you just expose this is sort of an interface, and you just opt into the bits that you want.
yeah. So at some point, there's going to be some sort of abstraction where, like, you're not having to like for every language reinvent the same thing. Then sort of.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder. I hope that language isn't JavaScript. Yeah, but VS Code is obviously. I think you have to write these language servers in JavaScript. Maybe they're just sort of. It's more just JSON.
No, I
Yeah.
think that there's a protocol
Yeah.
that
So
in play. So you can write it in whatever you like as long as it runs as long as it serves that protocol.
yeah. Okay.
I think it exposes a port on your machine and the IDE
All
is
right.
talking to it. I
Wow.
think, but I don't
Huh.
know.
It's a beast. VS Code is a beast. What it's doing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Um, yeah, yeah. The state of development tools, but it constantly feels like development tools are taking steps back. Like you go forward, then it
Yeah.
jumps back.
Right.
Just so you go, oh, there's a new thing, and then go, great. Now it doesn't have all of the support that all of the other things have got.
Yep.
So I can jump to the new thing, but now I've lost. Like I feel like I've lost my arms and legs, and I have to
Yeah.
start again.
Right.
Right? It's just really frustrating.
Maybe
Um,
that's why I'm not adopting these Copilot things. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
because I don't really use any of that refactoring stuff. It's interesting. I just always do it manually. It's crazy.
yeah,
Cut and paste.
yeah.
And,
So
yeah.
yeah, I found I got I got so good at it in ReSharper that the code base felt different. Like it
Hmm.
felt like it was Play-Doh, that
Yeah.
I was able to just go, oh yeah, okay, I can see what's going on here. This code that someone's written, it's really like got two abstractions inside there, right? And you could just select code and go move that to a method, move that to a method, right? Grab those, pull those to an interface right now, grab those, pull that out as a base class right now, change that base class inheritance to composition, right? And like so you just do these things, and suddenly I've got the thing and a plugin for it, right? And now I can write a different plugin that implements the same interface, and it works, right? And that was just a few minutes of literally just a refactor.
Because it's because obviously all code's just or most code's just text. So I'm just at the level like doing text operations where you're sort of at the next level above. So,
that's it, because you're acting on the AST directly, right, rather than on the text representation you can see on the screen. And of course, to do that, right, the tool has to literally parse all the code you've got, make a tree out of it of what it actually means, and then when you're applying your transformations, go, well, what would that mean as far as changing the tree, and then convert it back to text and put it back on the screen again, right?
I think there's some project. I think it was maybe Swift and maybe some other project. They have to be able to pass the AST, but they have to be able to pass not perfect ones. They have to be able to pass input that's incomplete. Which is like
so like tree sitter, right? So the idea that you've got a parser that goes, well, I know I had this wasn't working, right? But you've made a change here, and that's no longer valid. How do you interpret that in terms of code? Like anything below that in the text file is effectively not valid anymore. But you can think of it in terms of, oh well, that bit's not valid within that block. The rest of it's the same as it was. So the tree's fine, but that bit's a little bit different. And they do that you're constantly doing that with syntax highlighting, right? So it's like you're always doing it already, right? So then 10 years ago or more, God, no, much more than that. I don't know, 20 years ago, that people started talking about having editors that were effectively a projection of the AST, right? So that you're not really typing text, you're modifying the AST directly, and then also effectively everything you type gets converted into a thing that updates the AST and gets applied as changes and then rendered back again, right? So I think they're called the structural editors. I think that was what it was. So you were much more limited in what you could type where, because it wasn't just a text file you were looking at anymore. It was literally like a tree structure, effectively.
So it's like,
and that makes so much sense as far as what you're actually trying to do and the power it should unlock. But it's actually quite inconvenient, like not being able to just type what you want and have it be accepted as valid code, or invalid yet.
I guess it sounds a bit like Lisp is obviously something like fairly restrictive, but you'd probably want a bit more syntax sugar than that.
It's just that so often you'll grab some code from somewhere else, cut and paste it in, and then change it to make it right. Right. Things like that you can't do in a structural editor because if you copy and paste it from somewhere else, then you have to like pick the scope you're copying. Once you've got it in, then it's got all the same names as the previous thing, so that's not valid. So like you've got so there's or maybe I don't know. But interestingly though, you could, if you think of it in terms of having a structural editor that you're making changes to, then you could think of your editing process as a process of either refactorings, which are transformations of that tree structure into an equivalent tree structure that behaves the same, right, but has some different abstraction, or mutations, where you're literally modifying something to add a function or remove a function or rename a thing. Well, renames a function, refactoring. Anyway, add or remove stuff or modify lines of code, right? Insert lines of code. You can think of all those things as like a stream of changes that you're applying to some concept of what the code is.
This sounds like functional programming, by the way.
But like or database migigrations. Right? You have this
Yeah.
idea that you've got a database schema and you apply migrations to it to move the schema on. Right?
I thought it was just ironic that it sounded like you're creating this stuff like with ReSharper that sort of, and like pattern matching on ASTs and stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds like functional programming, but then you're using it to update
being applied to code,
orientated code. It's like,
I do think of these things. I do think of these things as deltas or transformers, right? Anyway, but I've had this picture in my head, right? If you've got your code base, you've applied transformations to it, right? And then what we do is we take that, convert it to text, and shove it into a version control system, right? That's crazy, right? Like why not version those transformations that you applied, right?
Yep.
And then when somebody else, like if say I rename a class, right, and separately on another branch you've started using that class,
Yep.
right? Currently with text files, those two things don't um,
Yep.
overlap each other, so they're not a conflict. So they both get committed, they both get merged into a master, and then they don't work because I renamed the class that you used, right?
Yep.
So then you get your build crash and you have to go and solve it, right? But if those two things were refactorings that were both being applied to the code base, you'd added a new use of a class in, and I'd renamed that class. Those should both be applicable, and either it'll complain that yeah. Anyway, theoretically, you could merge those in such a way that it allows you to use a class and me to rename the class, and it still works, right? Do
It's
you know what I mean?
well, it's funny to me. You just made me realize I'm over vastly oversimplifying here, but it's like CI that runs on like your GitHub repo or whatever. It's just verifying that the loosey goosey text that you wrote is like actually valid.
Yeah, right. Whereas it could all be stored in a valid AST, and then you know it's valid,
Yeah,
right?
and then when the build breaks, it's like, oh no, it turns out that loosey goosey text I wrote was invalid.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
There's a language called Unity, programming language called Unity, where the data store that you're adding to isn't text. It's a repository of your code, and they do a thing where for every function that you define, they anonymize it, get rid of all the
Oh,
names of
right.
things, and then they hash it, and then they store it under that hash,
Hmm.
and wherever you call that function, you call it by a hash,
Yeah, wow.
which means that um, uh, it means that your whole code base kind of works like a Git repo in that you've got a single hash at the top of your code base that
Hmm.
represents your entire code base, and it represents a specific version of
That's
your entire code
great.
base,
Yeah.
right? And the way they're using that is that they go, um, I want to run this bit of code on another machine.
Yep.
So you can say to another machine, run this function, right? And effectively it says run this hash with these parameters. And that code base goes, oh, I don't have that hash.
Hmm.
Can I have that function, please? Right. And it negotiates back and forth, going, give me the hashes I haven't got,
Wow.
until it's got the entire code base, and then it
Hmm.
runs it. Right. Or at least it's got the code base it needs for that function you asked and everything that function calls, right?
Hmm.
And it's going to run exactly the version of the code that you asked it to run on
Yep.
the remote machine, because it can't not, right?
Hmm.
The interesting side effect of this too, like it's a pure functional language that
Hmm.
which means that if you're giving it the same inputs, you should get the
Yep.
same outputs, which means that all methods are memoizable as well, right?
Yep.
Which means that unit tests, which are defined as, run this function with this code, and test that the output equals this thing, are also memoizable, which means that
Yeah, right.
once you, right, for a given SHA of a function, it's
Hmm.
never going to return you anything else, which
Yep.
means that once you've run that unit test once and it's passed, it never needs to be run again.
Yeah, right. That's crazy. Oh god.
Right?
That's
So,
awesome.
so isn't that interesting? Now imagine a build machine where you not only go, look, these are my tests, but you go, and you don't have to run them because they've all been run before,
Oh
right?
god. Yeah, just yeah, that's it doesn't have to do some tricky thing of like imagine how a lot of the existing optimize, oh, I want to make the build faster. It's like I have to work out the modification timestamps on every file, and then like, okay, it's imported this module, so I have to, or like imported this file, so I have to like walk all through that crap. It's like you've already done all that work ahead of time, so then it's just like,
Yeah,
okay, this thing's new, I'll just run that one.
yeah. So I mean, imagine. So I used to work in a medical device, and we were always looking at how we make things go faster, right? And the whole idea of justifying that your code is working for a medical device is to accumulate enough evidence that it works, right? So
Probabilistically.
yeah. Well, I mean, we've got a huge team of manual testers. We've got a whole bunch of automated tests we run.
Yep.
We had a whole hierarchy of of testing, right, going on.
Yep.
But but for any of those test results to be valid, you had to prove that they were the right test. They were the test results on the right version of the software in the right
Oh
environment,
god.
and so on,
How
right?
many
So
variables?
so but it got me thinking, right? Well, okay, well, as long as I can prove equivalence between environments, then you can say I've already run those tests on an equivalent environment. Therefore, there's no point retesting those on every other possible environment,
Hmm.
right? So as long as you can justify that equivalence. So, but the same thing is true with unit tests and things, right? If I've run them on my dev machine and my dev machine is a sufficiently equivalent environment to the environment that we care about,
Mhm.
right, then I should be able to use the fact that my tests passed as evidence and not have to run them again, right? So
Hopefully.
if you imagine
Yeah.
every test that ever gets run on any dev machine,
Yeah.
if it was to collect that onto some server somewhere, then you could say, right, well, these tests have already been passed. Which ones haven't been run yet? And therefore run things faster.
Yeah, it
Uh,
reminds me of that meme that's like it's from some movie, like a little boy, and then there's like an adult like with his hand arm around the boy, and it's like it works on my machine, and then the adult's like, we'll ship your machine to production, and then it's I'm not sure if it's the same meme or it's like a variation. It's like how Docker was born.
yeah, right. Exactly, right. Yeah, so I was thinking that, right? So that we did lean heavily on like virtualization and Docker and stuff like that
Hmm.
to be able to go, oh, this environment is equivalent to that environment,
Yeah,
right?
wow.
Because if the underlying hardware changed, you wanted to be able to say, well, okay, but it's it's still the same medical device. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely try not to bring up WebAssembly too much because it's my area of interest at the moment. But I think that is one of the compelling parts of WebAssembly is that you can. It's kind of crazy. Like you can literally the same WebAssembly module, run it on ARM, run it on Intel, run it on a Raspberry Pi. It would be exact same output. Like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely. It's. I agree with you. I think there's a sort of game changer element to that. Um, it's going to be really interesting. Yeah, I am. I don't know where that's going to go. I think, yeah, I like you. I think there's so many possibilities.
That's why I don't know where it's going to go. I can see the possibilities, and that's why I'm sort of trying. I'm working on stuff to like help, even if my project doesn't go like take off. It's like I've contributed some ideas, like so, and
Yeah,
or also I think I've learned a lot of stuff along the way. So if my project doesn't win, but there's a similar project that's
yeah, you'll
doing
be able to
got a lot of the
just
ideas.
mentally switch over to it easily enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've sort of I've already learnt a lot of that stuff. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. The thing that I'm still like stuck on with WebAssembly is just like the fact that um, you need to start from scratch in defining, well, what are my um, how am I going to represent various things in memory?
Yeah.
So and like I think they're called. There's like what is it? B. There's a three-letter acronym that has a B in it that represents like how binary something notation.
ABI.
Binary. Yeah. What should I say it again?
ABI.
Oh, ABI. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like your API is like the interfaces, and then the ABIs, I guess, it's usually like there's still a interface, but it's like at a lower level. So it's like if I'm got some C code and then I compile it, and I've got some other C code and I compile it, and they like talk to each other. They've agreed on the like semantics of hey, this register is used for the stack and blah 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 blah. And
Yeah.
when you pass an argument along to make a call to a function, you're going to affect this register and this one. Like because if they didn't agree on that stuff, then none of it would work. So yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So everything from is it little Indian or big Indian through
Ooh.
to okay, are we going to put a zero at the end of our strings to say that's the end of the string, or like what are we going to do? Right?
Yep.
Zig's got this interesting idea of slices,
Yep.
which are like arrays. So you have and effectively they're a pointer and a length, so that grouped together, so that whenever you pass it around, you're not just saying this is where it starts, but you're saying this is how long it is.
Hmm.
Um, and that's interesting. Like, but again, like for that to work, you would have to like define that as something that you're willing to accept in your binary format, and like this top two numbers together mean something, and know how to interpret it. With WebAssembly,
Yep.
if you've got two different WebAssembly components,
Yep.
surely, and if you want to pass information from one to the other, I'm assuming one of them writes into some memory, and then it passes the pointer to the other one so that you can then access that memory.
Yeah, you got the I don't know enough about WebAssembly 2.0 to know they're working on this thing called the component interface, which is trying to set up all this stuff so it's not so low level and it's more you can just sort of glue them together. And you've got this sort of garbage collection, the ability to do garbage collection, which for what they had to design, like it exploded in scope. So then you had to like,
Yeah.
okay, if I need to garbage collect objects or like things, well, I need to have some way to define those things. And then like, oh, I've got these different kinds of things. And so they had to create that whole system. But in
Yeah.
terms of like 1.0, you've basically got the host, which is like the
Yeah.
puppet master. And it's like dance, puppets dance. So the two
Yep.
WebAssembly modules are dancing. And then it's up to the host to sort of do the boilerplate to work the glue between them. So
Okay.
normally I think that each WebAssembly module, if it wanted to, or like instance, if you think of the WebAssembly module as the class, then you sort of, like you instantiate it into an instance. So like normally they
Yeah.
would have two different memories that
Yeah.
they own their own memory, but you can like
Yeah.
sort of like make the memory public from one and plug it into the other. It's not a pattern I've ever tried because it sort of sounds kind of risk
Yeah.
prone.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Because so yeah. Okay. That's the bit I was. I'm unclear on in my head too.
and
It's
but yeah. Oh, go ahead.
no, but I can imagine if two processors wanted to talk, then they could define some buffer that they
Yeah,
both
but
have access to.
it's just a big
And
array of bytes. It's not
yeah,
exactly very expressive. So you,
no, you agree. So you then have to have some convention on top of that that says
yeah,
this is how you need to read and write what I'm typing. Yeah.
exactly. And so I don't know. I really want to get more done on the whole project. But my initial idea, and there's like stuff for like CGI bin and stuff. Like I'm sure there's prior art that's done it all before. But my idea is to use web formats. So like you've got the URL, you've got URL query parameters, you've got whatever the hell it's called, like the form data, like there's the sort of
Yeah.
multi-part one, and then there's the simpler one, which is sort of just like URL query encoding.
Okay.
You got CSVs, like you got these sort of like webby formats that are designed to like be sent over the network. And so it's like
Mm.
it's not the most efficient or it's like not the most optimal, but they're like universal. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of wondering. Like, it seems kind of weird. Like, oh, the WebAssembly module gave me like this query string. It seems a bit weird, but I think it like if your host like will have support to be able to pass that stuff, and it's like really
Yeah.
well known how to deal with those sort of formats.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I think uh, there's a yeah, it sounds like you're trying to skirt the line between um, I know you're a strong believer in standards, right? And
Yeah,
saying, well, there's these various standards that have been around for forever, right? And they're not changing.
and the water
If
node.
anything, yeah, anything you build on top of those will just keep working,
Yeah,
right? Um, but at the same time, I'm worried about like that weird thing we've got now, where every app is pretending it's a document so that it can work
yeah,
inside a virtual machine that like knows how to render documents to a screen.
yeah,
um, and that's just a common that's like a whole bunch of stuff built on top of an abstraction that wasn't really the right abstraction for what you're trying to do.
yeah, yeah,
So my fear with what you were saying is that you're going, oh, I'm going to use URLs as a way to pass data backwards and forwards
yeah,
because it's a known thing, but it's not actually what I'm trying to do. It's just happens to be similar to what I'm trying to do, and it's
yeah,
known. Yeah.
yeah.
And you can absolutely build things on top of known abstractions, but you might end up with HTML again, right?
Yeah,
like,
maybe.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
HTML is both beautiful and a bastard of a language.
yeah, exactly right.
It's I mean, part of it's because I want the WebAssembly stuff. I do probably ideally want it to run in the browser, and the browser gives you a lot for free. And yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like some of the decisions that you get, the thing that if you choose what's for free, the decision that they've made, you might go, this sucks, but
Yeah,
um, yeah. So I guess I'm probably leaning more towards like just yeah, that's my de facto. But like there's stuff with like forms, like old school forms, um, like from the 90s. If you do like method equals get and have like an import name
yeah,
equals q or whatever, and then you
yeah,
submit the form, it like changes the URL for you. Ta-da! Like it's like it just works, no JavaScripts, and it just
yeah,
so like that. There's an example of like the URL being used as for to capture the state, and then
yeah,
if you do method equals post, it does the other format.
Yeah.
and you can opt into multi-part if you want. So like, I kind of want that stuff to be for free as well. And so
Yeah.
so when you submit the form, it could just go, here's the data. The browser just sent me this data. Here, WebAssembly module, and it's like the WebAssembly module already knows how to speak that.
Yeah. Right.
So that's it. Might be a bit of a crazy idea, but that's that's what I want to explore. Um,
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah,
So the problem you're solving, I think, so yeah, yeah. So the problem you're trying to solve is literally like inter-process communication between these WebAssembly bits, components, right?
it's um,
You're trying to pass data backwards and forwards
yeah.
between
You
them.
need to pass data
Oh,
back and forwards in a way that's robust. I don't
yeah,
want to invent my own format. That's just a waste
yeah,
of time. Um, and
sure.
it
Okay,
needs to be
cool.
something where no matter what host language you use, it just knows how to do it. You might,
Yeah,
some languages might need a URL library, but for the most part, like it's built in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And you don't want to just define your own ABI that goes, here's a bunch of standard like lists and then strings and whatever's,
Yeah,
because then you've
there's
got to
lots.
convince everyone to use it.
Yeah, there's lots of I forgot what's the one called? There's so many of these different formats. Like there's proto buffer, obviously, but then there was one.
Yeah, right.
What's it called? Not flat buffer. Oh, Captain Proto. Got the most silly name.
I haven't heard of that one. Yeah, go on.
It's the. I think it was one developer who was working at Google or something like that, and here it is. Kenton Varda was the primary author of Protocol Buffers version 2, which is the version that Google released as open source. And so he
Yeah,
released that, and he's like saying Captain Proto is the result of years of experience working with protobufs, listening to user feedback, and then thinking about how things could be done better. So I'm going to try and get this right, but it's they advertise like a encoding time that's infinitely faster than protobuf, because you basically just take I guess your C struct layout and then just get that pointer, and then that's the encoding.
right. Okay,
Which would be like normally the most insecure, stupidest thing to ever do, but um,
sure.
they do it. So I think it's little endian by default. So if you on a big endian CPU, you just have to flip them over.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that his website, I'll put it in the show notes.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I think.
Yeah, I've been using been writing tile servers that return their tiles of vector data to a browser to put on a map, like a Google Earth or Google Map type thing. And yeah, so we've got this file form MVT, which is protobufed as well. So I've been playing with protobuf a fair bit, but it's interesting. It because it's all binary, so it's all impossible to read unless you like unencode it all somehow, right? So
You
then you
need the
have to,
Rosetta Stone to decode it,
yeah,
do you? Yeah, because you need to
yeah,
know what
right,
those different offsets are.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right. So like if you're using a standard one, then there are sometimes tools that know how to read that standard format, but um, yeah, but it makes things tricky. Yeah, interesting. I'll have to have a look into that because like the whole reason I'm using all that protobuf is just speed. Like
Hmm.
I'm just trying to get things to the browser as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not. There's a million formats. Like so there's a new format whenever there's a new JavaScript library. It seems so. I'm sure they're all doing similar things, but yeah. To be honest, I don't know enough. I don't have enough hands-on experience, but yeah, they're interesting to read about.
yeah,
Um, I just thought I'd quickly ask you. I'm wondering if we possibly make this 2 episodes. I just had the Rabbit R1 thought. The so you saw the video, and like, and then you saw, I forget what they call it, the ability basically for it to learn.
yeah, yeah.
Like, well, how do you think it's doing that? Because it seemed like if I was to implement that, I would be scraping a website, pretending to submit forms and shit, and then like have some cookies, and then like remember the cookies, and like I was wondering, like, do they basically like have a headless browser in the background, or like are they doing something
Yeah, so
way simpler?
it looked to me like they're using a browser plugin that knows how to record what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the same as recording an automated test using
Yep.
your browser. And then effectively that will generate some sort of script, right? That's like, go to this URL, click on this button
Yep.
that's named this, and so on, right? And then I think they're then submitting that script to the engine and saying, here is an example of me doing this thing.
Yep.
Generate me a generic template for this thing, right,
Yep.
under the covers, right? And
Yep.
then it's going, okay, and it's replacing various text you typed with variables, like where to insert the variable, and then that becomes its own little function that it then adds to its list of things it's able to do.
Yeah. It's to go back to your like sort of macros within C sharp and stuff.
Totally, yeah.
ReSharper.
It's like you
Yeah.
select the text, going insert variable, and then
Yeah. It's crazy.
you end up with a function. Yeah.
So
Um,
I wonder how is it how is it, yeah, so is that's the first solution that I sort of thought up. So it's like, yeah, I don't how if it's going to work with all these different services, like it just seems a bit fragile. Like, how do you know, like, you're okay, trained it to log into Spotify or whatever? Like, how do you know
yeah.
it's not going to just like break in 2 weeks?
Well, it may do. Yeah. As
Yeah,
soon as that web page changes, it'll break. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And but it's the same as when you write any automated test. You've got
Yep.
that scenario, right? Um,
Or if or
yeah, and I guess so when you write automated tests traditionally
yep,
on browser tests, you'll have these scripts that you're running that interact with the page.
yep,
The thing that runs the script uh, is literally an execution engine that goes, I know how to do click. I'm going to look for the DOM node that you asked me to find, and then I'm going to send it a click event, right?
yep,
Um, you could have something that's going, here's my script of what to do,
yep,
and then I'm an intelligent agent that's then executing those commands. And it could sit there, and whenever it tells the executor to do the command, it could go get an error back and go, I can't find that DOM node.
yeah.
And it could go, oh, well, what shall I do with that?
It could
Right?
use its fuzzy thinking.
Right.
I
And
think
maybe
it's
it goes, well, maybe it's called something else now. Let's look
yeah,
at the
yeah, that's
page.
crazy.
Let's look at the page and see what the most likely link is.
Yep.
Or right. And in the same way that a
Because
human,
it
if you were
yep.
running the test yourself, you would go, well, hang on, the login page is now called,
Or
sign up.
or you might
Or
go, "Hey, Copilot, what's your suggestion?" And then the Copilot goes, and you go, "Oh, that works. Thanks, Copilot." If they just like automated that, put that in the loop.
yeah, automatic loop. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
crazy.
But hey, at some point, you're not guaranteed that you're achieving the same goal you were originally achieving.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
getting
you
back
might accidentally delete your account or something. Yeah.
yeah, right. If it looked like the thing that that you were interacting with to do that, was like, if you picked the wrong button, yeah,
Yep.
I think that button is that button now instead. But ideally, like with each of these things, their AI is able to give you confidence values
Yep.
on what it's doing, and inherently something in there is going, oh, that's good enough. That confidence value is high enough. I'll go for it. And with the large language models, it's unclear where that comes from, right? Because you're saying, give me the next word, give me the next word, give me the next word,
Yep.
and you're asking it to be a bit creative and like not pick the most common word frequently as well.
Yep.
So so there's what's the confidence? Like, the confidence is that this is the right word to say after that word, right? It doesn't have the higher level abstraction of what's the thing, the concept I just explained, and
Yeah.
how much faith should you have in that concept? I don't know. Like,
Yep.
there's some abstraction there that's missing, I think.
Yep.
But it's probably going to be solved by having another AI that's watching that AI, and it's like
Yeah.
judging how accurate it thinks it is, or like
It needs a
this.
scrum master of AIs,
Sure, totally.
It's it needs the career coach of AIs to
It's like it reminds me of that whole, there's no programming problem that you can't solve without an extra level of abstraction, except for the problem of too many levels of abstraction.
Oh god.
and
Bloody
and
hell.
there's no AI problem you can't solve without having another AI watching that AI and
Oh
telling it whether it's
god.
wrong. giving it
Oh
feedback.
God. Yeah, I'm not going to be a consultant when we're in that world because that sounds
Yeah.
like hell. I, it was interesting with the R1 because I heard some stuff. I can't remember who exactly it was. Might have been the stratechery guy saying that they were effectively bootstrapping a platform because like if you like Microsoft failed with the Windows. The sort of Windows phone that came after the iPhone came out. Obviously, they spent years and years trying to do Windows Phone before, but they like just couldn't get it off the ground because they couldn't really get like third-party developers to develop apps. And like Facebook tried the same thing. Like they just
Yeah, right.
even with their backing, they just couldn't get the ecosystem to be created. Whereas this thing's like got a cheat code, where it's like by the sounds of it, maybe just uses like web automation or something. It can already connect to all these things, so they don't have to ask
Yeah.
Notion or whatever like third party
Yeah.
developer to develop an app for it. Like that's
Yeah, there's some website somewhere where you can point it at any other website and it will create an API for that website.
yeah,
So that
right. That's
it just like looks at the web pages and works out what they're for and
yeah, it's
goes, oh
crazy.
yeah, just give me JSON that would like this, that would
Yeah,
and
right.
then you can automate the web, right? Or interact with any website as
It's
an API.
it's something that's like a script kiddie, like that will work for a number of weeks, but like I'd never like submit a solution like that as a professional programmer to.
Sure, yeah, I totally get your fear.
But if they get
Um,
enough success, it doesn't matter. And if they become such, or if this platforms like it get
yeah,
such traction, then people might be like at Spotify, oh shit, we just broke the Rabbit R1, revert that commit. It's using its
yeah,
fuzzy interpreter web
sure, yeah.
scraper thing.
Okay.
That's crazy.
I think the Yeah. So it depends how mission critical the thing is that's built on top of it, right?
Yeah.
So if your Rabbit R1 forgot how to order a taxi for a period of time,
Yeah.
you'd be frustrated, but it would start working again after a little while, right?
You'd
So many
hang up.
businesses in the past have been built on top of like scraping the web.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab all of the real estate listings off some website or something, right?
Yeah.
And and if they change their website, you're busted,
Yeah.
but you're only busted until you fix it again, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and you just have some looping or some alarm that goes off pretty quickly that goes,
Yeah.
oh, they've changed the site. Let's try again. Um, and ideally those things are asynchronous anyway, so you're grabbing data. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It does. There's lots of different ways you can think about like what would the web be in the future, right? And the idea that every company should have an API so that you can interact with it in programmatically rather than just by logging onto a web page and
Yeah.
clicking
That'd
buttons,
be ideal. Yeah.
right? Yeah, exactly. It feels like I don't know how successful this was. I never really played with it, but I noticed that on the Mac operating system, right, every application effectively has a programming interface that you can hit.
With voiceover, the
No, no.
accessibility.
So there's like no. So for years,
Yeah. Oh,
there's like
Apple script.
this automation engine thing that you can go launch my application, and
Is that
ah,
Apple script? And then it's like
yeah,
shortcuts.
maybe,
That's how I first started programming.
yeah, right. I noticed that there's some automation tool that comes with the Mac operating system that allows you to just go, oh yeah, interact with that program I've got installed, and
Yeah.
it will go, okay, well these are the things you can do to that program,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I
um,
think that's
and
Apple script. Yeah.
yeah, right, yeah, and it's just such a
It's a great idea.
Yeah, such a great idea, right? Like it's like every app has an API, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. It
Yeah.
feels like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's what the web felt like 15 years ago. Like I remember like Flickr had an API then it's like
yeah,
they didn't want it's like no, you have to be forced to use whatever UI that the SaaS company's chosen to use. That pendulum swung away. But
yeah, right.
it's ironic. It just seems ironic to me. Yeah, you could just have these like very precise, like well-defined JSON API or whatever. But
Yeah, yeah,
now, no, that won't work. So we've got to have these web pages written in these web formats. You just warn me about,
yeah,
HTML and like that's sort of like got all these warts. And then to make that even work, then we need another fuzzy layer on top AI to like interpret it all, and then we
yeah,
get back the nice crisp precision that we want.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's crazy. It's a crazy country. Oh, dear. And it all feels like such a house of cards. You know,
Yeah,
just
it's
waiting,
a giant
waiting
hack.
to collapse at any moment.
Yeah, it's a giant hack. All right. Well, I think that was a good episode. Yeah, I'm glad you made it because yeah, I was interested in your thoughts on last week. So yeah, cool,
Awesome. Good talking to you, Patrick. We'll catch you again soon.
cool. See ya.
Bye.